So the blockbuster season is right around the corner, and that means it's time for me to give my picks for the 5 best and the 5 worst films of 2019 thus far. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Tell me your picks for the best and the worst of 2019 thus far. My picks aren't the right picks, they're just my picks, and I would love to see yours. Before I get started, I've got some new t-shirt designs in my merch store. You can check them out at the link down below in the description to see if there's one that you'd like. With that said, let's get started. I'll kick things off with a dishonorable mention for Hellboy. I know a lot of people actually have this as their pick for the worst movie of 2019 thus far, and on a story and storytelling level, it's really bad, but for me, I actually had a little bit of fun with it, so it's not in my bottom 5 of the year. The 5th worst movie for me is Velvet Buzzsaw. This movie is an early contender for biggest disappointment of 2019 for me. This is from the creative team that gave us Nightcrawler a few years back, which I thought was fantastic, had amazing performances. This movie doesn't really work for me on any level that it's going for. It's trying to do this high art send-up type thing. It's trying to be a horror movie, and it's just a very odd mix that I just didn't particularly enjoy at all. Number 4, I'm gonna go with Escape Room. Now, I actually really enjoyed the first 2/3 of this movie. It's a perfectly serviceable B movie that had I gotten it from Redbox, I would have had a good time with it. The different rooms that they're in, the cast that they hired, I thought all of them did a pretty good job with the material, and it provided just enough thrills for the setup to keep me entertained. And then it goes into the final third of the film where it starts providing answers to what's going on. And sometimes the mystery is a lot more enjoyable than the answer to the mystery. And that's the case with this movie. As soon as they started providing answers, I was like, I don't buy this. This doesn't quite work. And it starts getting more and more preposterous with each scene that continues on. And by the end of it, it just felt like they were trying to set up a sequel, and it just seemed ridiculous. 3rd worst for me was Dumbo. Now, granted, I'm not the target audience for this movie. Dumbo's never been one of my favorite of the Disney classics, and I saw this in a theater that was fairly empty with no children inside of it. So there were several different things that might have tainted my experience with this film, but for the most part, it just didn't connect with me really at all. The way it's told, it makes all the adults seem a little bit too dumb and too gullible at different points in time. I didn't really like the look that they gave the film. It just felt too processed to me. Like, I knew that they were at real locations, but a lot of the real locations they were at felt like CGI locations because everything was just so color corrected in a specific way that I just didn't particularly enjoy. And so much of the drama inside of it felt fabricated to me, like they were trying to elicit a specific type of response from me rather than an organic telling of the story about an elephant that can fly. And so I just didn't enjoy the experience of watching this film. Granted, like I said, I'm not the target audience. I didn't have my kids with me, so there wasn't a lot of awe and wonder inside of the room that I was in. And so I was just kind of bored watching it. My runner-up for worst is Greta. This is another one that once again started out as a pretty good thriller with this kind of old lady that's kind of awkward befriending this young girl who's new to New York City. And then as it goes along, it just kind of falls apart in its own insanity. At first, it's this kind of creepy stalker type vibe between the two of them, with some interesting performances between, especially the old lady and the roommate inside of it. But then as it moves into the second half of the film, as it starts going from slight stalker, creepy, uncomfortable old lady to totally bonkers old lady, the movie stops making a lot of sense. Every scene you're like, why isn't this person making a phone call? Why didn't these two people talk to each other? Why is this person going alone? Why didn't this person tell anyone they were going over here? And so like, I just couldn't buy into the narrative inside of it. And it even tries to have some of these big twists and turns as you move into the final section of the film, but it telegraphs all of its moves so far in advance to make it really obvious what's being set up and what's going on. There's even plot points inside of it where they just kind of get thrown out and abandoned. And so this is another one that seemed like there was a good movie inside of there that was totally botched by the execution. But my pick for the worst of the year thus far is Captive State, and it breaks my heart to say that because It's from the director of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, a movie that I really enjoy. It's got a really great cast with John Goodman being one of the stars of the film. And it's a sci-fi film about an alien invasion, and it has political elements to it. All this stuff sounds amazing to me. The execution of the story, however, is not good. It starts off where you follow one set of characters, and then 30 minutes into it, you abandon these characters, and they're just kind of like written into a corner, almost literally. One character is literally written into a corner. And then we go off and we follow these other characters for this whole long, gigantic adventure, and then they get put in a corner, and then this guy's let out, and we follow him again. It's just bizarre, the structure of this movie. And because of the way the characters are written, the way the twists and reveals are handled with the film, you don't really know who to root for. You don't know who you care about or what you want to have happen, because the wrong things are kind of kept a mystery in the wrong ways. So you don't care about anything until you get to the end of it and you're like, oh, now I kind of want to rethink everything I thought about this, but I didn't really enjoy getting here, so I don't really want to rewatch it. It's the type of movie that feels to me like they restructured it in editing. Like they filmed it, it wasn't quite working, so they tried to fix it with the editing and some reshoots, and by the end of it, they just have this cobbled movie of weird stuff that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. All right, now it's time to get started with the fun list. Remember to share your picks down below in the comments section. After this video, right up here's my playlist with all of my 2019 movie reviews, so you can see my full movie reviews for all of these films up there in that playlist. Let's get started with some honorable mentions. First up will be Triple Frontier. I just thought this was a really good heist thriller from Netflix with a great cast. Kept me on the edge of my seat from beginning to end. This is the type of movie that I want Netflix to do more of. Second honorable mention will be the Lego Movie 2, the second part. This is one of those movies that when I first watched it, I was like, I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. Like, I enjoyed some of it. There's some catchy songs inside of it, but there's kind of some plot holes inside of the story, and I was spending a lot of my time thinking about the plot hole side of things. I've now seen the movie 4 times because we bought it a couple days ago, and my family's been watching it on loop. I think it does a lot of things right. It gets the most important things right for a Lego movie. It's funny, it has heart, and it has some clever writing inside of it, even if not all of it fully makes sense. But kicking off our best of list will be Shazam at number 5. They decided to take the idea of big and merge it with the superhero genre, and you get the movie Shazam, and it is a whole lot of fun, which is what we expected going into this movie, with Zachary Levi in the lead as a superhero with the mind of a 14-year-old boy. But what I wasn't expecting from this movie was how much heart it was going to have and how well it was going to handle and tackle all the elements about finding family in different types of places. It really digs in deep on that stuff, and some of my favorite moments rewatching the film were with the foster family and the foster parents and where it goes with all that and how nicely it pays off in the third act of the film. And so this was just a really nice addition to the genre. Coming in at number 4 is They Shall Not Grow Old. If you don't know what this is a documentary about World War I directed by Peter Jackson, and it's composed entirely of actual footage and recordings and interviews by World War I soldiers, veterans, people that worked during World War I, talking about World War I and footage of and pictures of World War I. So it's the people of the time telling their stories. So the recordings are all like 50 years old. But where this one gets really cool is that they digitally restored, remastered all the footage and put it in 3D, which sounded ridiculous when I heard what this movie was, but it was one of the most immersive experiences I have ever had with a film, because you know that you're watching 100-year-old footage and hearing 50-year-old interviews from people telling these stories, and that because they did such a good job of remastering the footage and using the 3D for depth as opposed to, obviously they weren't using it for gimmicks, that it just sucked you 100 years into the past, and you got to experience a lot of this footage you might have even seen before, but in a totally new way. It's the type of movie that it just won't be the same experience if you watch this at home on Blu-ray. you have to see this one in the theater on a big screen in 3D to properly understand what Peter Jackson pulled off with this film. Kicking off the top 3 is How to Train Your Dragon 3. This is one of those franchises that has kept the quality up from beginning to end. It's great family adventure, great family entertainment, and it has always had a nice heart inside of it. This one is kind of closing out the trilogy, and for my money, I thought that this film had the best villain of all 3 films in that he's kind of smart, he's outthinking them, he's a real threat in new different types of ways than had been in the previous 2 films. And then as this movie kind of continues along into its final moments, they just set up all the right pieces to be able to end with an amazing final 5 minutes of the film that it'll put a smile on your face, it'll make you cry at the same time. It just tugs on your heartstrings. They absolutely found a way to make this film take flight and land the franchise perfectly. Our runner-up is Fighting with My Family. This movie tells the real-life story of wrestler Paige, and I'm not someone that came into this film with a background of being a wrestling fan or knowing her story at all or knowing who she is at all. And so I was just watching this movie as just a film, and I thought it kind of hit all the right notes. It's a really funny movie, and all the humor comes out organically from these clever, quirky characters that they created. But likewise, it's a movie filled with drama, that all the drama comes from the quirks, the faults of each of these characters. As much as you enjoy them because they can be kind of funny at times, they all have these things about them that aren't quite right. And when they come in conflict with one another, you get drama inside of the film. It's also a sports movie that delivers all the big payoff moments that you want from a sports film, but it also subverts your expectations of how it's going to get there. You think they're setting certain characters up to be certain tropes in the sports genre, and then they're not. They knock over that and it sets something else up to where the conflict actually comes from. And all of it feels right because, as I said, the drama, the conflict comes from the characters' faults. And so for me, this was a nice little surprise for me. It wasn't on my radar at all until I went to go see it, and it put a huge grin on my face. But my favorite movie of 2019 thus far is Dragged Across Concrete. This was actually one of my most anticipated films of 2018, and then it didn't end up coming out until this year. It's from the director of Brawl and Cell Block 99 as well as Bone Tomahawk, and this director has such a distinct storytelling style. He has very long takes, long scenes. He writes and directs in a fashion that's very similar to the way a novel is written. So where his sequences are more like chapters in books rather than scenes in movies. And it gives such a unique way to the way he allows his stories to unfold. So they're all very slow paced. They're these slow burns, and this movie is no exception to that. During the first hour, you're kind of wondering, where exactly is this going? I'm enjoying the dialogue and these characters and the scenarios we're in, but where's this going? And then after you hit about hour and 10 minutes into it, you realize the whole movie's been setting up a series of dominoes, and then it knocks it over, and you're just kind of tense on the edge of your seat like, this is not going to go well at all. Oh, I'm very nervous about where this is going. He also has this great ability to create villains that are terrifying in different ways. Like, he doesn't have to force you to be afraid of them. They just show you these things that make you go, whoa, these guys are nasty human beings. There's great acting all around from especially our 2 leads, Mel Gibson, as well as Vince Vaughn. Now, I will say this, though. I considered not including this video in my list because the studio that distributed it, Lionsgate, actually put a copyright claim on my review of it. My review that said, my favorite movie, of 2019. They actually put a claim on it because I used footage from their trailer to promote their movie. So that's really frustrating. That's very frustrating that I'm trying to tell people to go see their movie and they're getting me in trouble with YouTube over it. Come on, Lionsgate, think about what you're doing. The movie itself, the creative team, fantastic job. Be sure to share your picks down below in the comments section. Remember to check out that playlist right over there for my full reviews on each of these movies, including my review that Lionsgate has struck for copyright reasons. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.